What is up, everyone? Welcome into the Couch Coach podcast. This is a new thing that I am starting myself and exploring a little bit, something that I've always wanted to do. Have a podcast to be able to talk about college sports, specifically college football. Huge college football fan. I am a Florida State fan, so obviously college football has not been a topic of joy for me lately. If you know anything about college football, you know where Florida State stands. Um, but yeah, this is something I've been wanting to do for a long time to talk about sports, to kind of put my thoughts out there, to build a community really um, around college football and football in general. Played football in high school, loved it, would have loved to play in college, and that just didn't really work out for me. And so I've just been super deep into football my whole life, and something I want to continue to be deep into. Um, Continue learning about football. The game is obviously ever changing, and I would love through this podcast to build a community around that, just to build a community. I know that the fans in college football are some of the most passionate fans. They care about their team, they care about their programs. Just such an amazing community in general, and I'd love to have that um, that same kind of feel around here in the Couch Coach podcast. So we're gonna have some fun today. We're gonna go through the Yahoo Sports College Fantasy Football. This is brand new. We're gonna kind of look at what this is gonna look like, what the scoring is gonna look like. We won't be doing a mock draft today, but we will be doing that here in the near future. We're just going to kind of look at the format, the scoring, what's different, maybe even talk some strategy, what can be some good strategies to implement in this level of fantasy football. Obviously, this is going to be a lot different than NFL fantasy football, just because of how different the game is, different competition, different levels of competition. Um, as you can see here, I am already in a league, so I have looked at a couple of things. Me and one of my friends are putting together um, a league, and this hasn't been edited at all. Um, so yeah, that'll be fun to get into. Um, like I said, we're gonna look at scoring, things like that, the interface, and some some of that fun stuff. So we're gonna go ahead and get started. We're gonna jump into some things. Obviously, the league tab. This isn't gonna have a lot right now because fantasy football hasn't really started up yet. College is I believe a lot of schools are at their like the conference meetings. You go and they're giving interviews. I know I've seen a lot of Mike Norvell interviews from the ACC media days that they're doing right now. I'm sure that I think pretty much all the conferences are doing theirs or going through theirs right now. Um, so yeah, this is pretty empty at the moment. A draft hasn't happened, no games are being played. We are gonna dive into the settings just really fast because this is gonna kind of tell us um, what this is gonna look like. And this, I feel like after looking at all of this already, and I have looked at it a little bit, not a ton. I kind of wanted to discover a little bit with y'all as the same time, at the same time as y'all. Most of this looks pretty standard. Um, I don't see anything that looks drastically different. I do like that league votes are optional. I was wondering if that was going to be, obviously this is league votes on trades. Um, if that was just going to be implemented. So your roster positions, it looks like this is going to be one quarterback, two wide receivers, two running back, tight end. We have two flex positions. This is new, and we're going to talk about this a little bit. You're going to draft an offense in like as a whole. Um, in the NFL space, you draft a defense special team combination, which you will still also draft in college football here, but you're also going to draft a offense as a whole. We have one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight bench spots and IL. I'm assuming this is going to be your injury slot. I'm not exactly sure. Um, Fractional points are going to be on. Sorry, I'm just kind of talking to myself as I read through some of these things. Um, so yeah, we're looking at offensive points. This is how points will be delegated as people perform. Um, this is not much different from just how you would do a standard NFL dynasty, or not a dynasty, sorry, a NFL fantasy league. Passing yards are looking the same. This is going to be a 4 point per passing touchdown league. Half point PPR, not full point PPR. I know a lot of people are playing in full point. Full point. I don't see an option for tight end premium. I didn't see one up here. If that isn't the thing, then I hope that that gets added. I know tight end premium is something a lot of people love, and tight ends are very unpredictable in college football, so that could be something that people have a lot of fun with is having a tight end premium and really getting deep into the tight end position. I honestly just think that that would be um, good for college football if people maybe took a deeper look into the tight ends because sometimes those tight ends get a little overlooked. Tight ends generally don't play the same role in college as a tight end in the NFL. Obviously, we see the league shifting right now in the NFL to these heavier sets, 12 and 13 personnel. We don't see a whole lot of that, particularly in college, all too often. Um, so hopefully, tight end premium is something that they add as an option for people to use. And then here is the new scoring um, for offensive team. You're going to get 3 points per touchdown. 300 yards of offense will hit you a point and a half. Every 50 yards after is going to be a quarter of a point. Obviously, a turnover, just like for your players, is going to be negative 2 points. A field goal is going to be one. Wins. That's interesting. You actually get a point whether your team wins or loses. I'm glad it's just 1 point. Um, that is kind of cool. It'd be interesting if you were able to. I'm sure the manager or the league commissioner will be able to change that, but if you could change that to like 5 points for a win, 5 points, negative 5 points for a loss, um, would be very, very interesting. Um, Defense looks relatively similar to what a NFL drafted defense will look like as far as scoring goes. So yeah, this will be very interesting. The obviously the main difference being the offensive team that you will draft. I'm very excited for that. We're going to talk about this a little bit later whenever we kind of get into what I think the early strategies for college football fantasy will be. But um, the I guess what's the right way to put this? The skill gap in college football is much bigger than the skill gap between like the worst team in the NFL and the best team in the NFL is a lot different from a bad college football team and a good college football team. Um, so yeah, I think that the scoring is really going to come into play there. But where's the player list? I want to look at the player list and kind of just show what this is going to look like. Obviously, if you've used Yahoo, I'm assuming this is what the NFL player list and all of that looks like. I've never used Yahoo for fantasy before. I'm a sleeper guy. Hopefully, this format does come to other platforms such as Sleepers, CBS, ESPN Fantasy, all that. I'm excited that someone has done it officially, brought it brought it to the forefront. Like I said, college football fans extremely passionate. I think this will take off really fast. I think it's good for the sport to have things like this on all the levels for college and NFL. But we're looking right now at the player list. They do not have projections, it looks like, yet for these players. They must have some kind of internal projections because they obviously have a preseason rank, as you can see here in this little orange-ish pink column. Um, Obviously, Jeremiah Smith is going to be your um, number one player. I don't think anybody expected any different there. We're not really going to deep dive into this list. I just thought it would be cool to kind of look at the format, look at what it looks like. I was hoping they would have projections, but it doesn't seem like they have that yet, which is okay. College football is still a little ways out. I also think that what this is going to do now with storing data in this way, and obviously all this data has been stored somewhere before, um, but having it in the fantasy format, this is really going to change the way that NFL dynasties work. Analysts are going to have a lot more information. People that are really deep into Dynasty NFL football for the fantasy side of things are going to be able to look directly at college football fantasy and see what kind of stats and what kind of fantasy points people were able to produce as college athletes. Uh, so yeah, that's going to be very interesting to see how this will even really affect the NFL um, from a dynasty standpoint, just with all of the extra and a lot more easily accessible information. Um, the more casual dynasty fan will now be able to more easily access these kinds of things, and it'll be a lot less of nitpicking at casual stats and really just being able to look at fantasy production for those people that do play fantasy dynasty in the NFL. Um, this, where's Antoine Raymond? So this is something I wanted to kind of highlight um, today as kind of like a strategy. This is obviously just me thinking out loud and kind of learning about this as I go. Um, like I said earlier, the worst NFL team, the skill gap between the worst NFL team and the best NFL team is much smaller than the skill gap between a bad college team and a very good college team. Um, obviously, the running back for the Rutgers is not nearly as highly regarded as a guy like Jaden Baugh, who plays in the SEC, a guy like Kawan Lacey, also playing in the SEC, even Ahmad Hardy. They have him down here ranked as their 17th overall player. Um, these guys play in a lot harder conference than Antoine Raymond, who plays for the Rutgers. Um, my early strategy, and obviously I'm not going to go draft a bunch of FCS players, right? Like Jeremiah Smith is the best wide receiver there is going to be, but there is still going to be wide receivers and running backs such as Antoine Raymond and even Antoine Raymond's teammate KJ Duff, um, amazing wide receiver, but plays for the Rutgers. Those guys are still going to put up probably elite fantasy numbers because of the competition that they play against. Um, So right now, one of the big strategies that a lot of people are looking at in the NFL for redraft this year is going late on quarterback, and I'm wondering if we'll see something similar in this college space where people kind of are looking deeper into the draft order at some of these FCS players because their competition is going to be a lot weaker, right? Drafting a guy like Kawan Lacey, who has to play up against teams in the SEC, might look glamorous and cool from the outside, but is a guy like Antoine Raymond, who plays in a much um, easier conference against a lot easier competition, is he a better pick because of that? And will he be able to put up better fantasy numbers because of that easier competition? Um, I guess we're going to find that out. Obviously, we have no prior information to go off of as far as fantasy scoring, what the fantasy strategy here will be. But I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that a lot of these, you'll see probably in a lot of leagues, people are going to be getting these FCS or non-Power 4 conference players a lot later in the draft, and they're still going to perform. They're still going to produce elite fantasy numbers. So when you're doing your drafts and things like that, make sure you take that into account. Don't just ignore these FCS and non-Power 4 guys just because they're not like the premier names. Um, this is going to be, I believe, the deeper into college football like you're willing to go, the better you will be in this college football fantasy space because you're going to know these guys like Antoine Raymond, KJ Duff. I wonder if he even falls anywhere here. Let's see if we can even just type him up. Let's see, KJ Duff. What is his player rankings? Okay, so they do have him at 30. Um, Still pretty good as far as things like this go. A guy like Deuce Robinson, I wonder where they have him ranked. Preseason number 42. Interesting. Okay. That was more of a personal lookup because I'm an FSU fan, but just interesting to see um, these projections. I'm going to be very interested to see how the analyst space ranks these FCS players in the fantasy through a fantasy lens. Um, that'll be very interesting to see. A couple of other things I wanted to look at. Um, probably won't be doing um, a mock draft today. I think that I'm probably going to save that um, for another day. Let's see. This was something that I did want to look at a little bit. It's empty right now, but I think that this is very cool. Um, okay, that'll be blurred out. um, I think this is going to be very interesting as far as what this will look like when the season starts and people start trading, people have done their drafts, um, things like that. I don't know if this is also available in the NFL format for Yahoo. I don't know if this is something standard that they do. I've never used Yahoo for fantasy. I think I mentioned that before. So this is going to be very this is very cool to me just to have a whole section not only just for research like it says up here where we can go through all these transactions trends, the trade market, who's hot, matchup rankings. This is going to be interesting because we just talked about those FCS non-power 4 conference teams. Please get out of here. What is that? Okay. Um yeah, very very interesting. I'm assuming these MVPs are just going to be like best player at your position type deal. Let's go look at some mock drafts. Where are some draft results? Will this show us? Okay, this is just going to be our personal draft results. Pre-draft rankings. Okay, so this is a personal, you can create a personal rankings board. Um, this will be very cool. So let's see, what if I go, is this going to, let's make a quick, we'll do a quick little top 10 throwing people in here. Um, I feel like Jeremiah Smith just has to be the number one on pretty much all boards. I don't see any quarterbacks on here. Where are the quarterbacks? Okay. Um, this is, I wonder why when I go to all, it doesn't show those top guys at the top. Maybe this is showing results from what other people are doing. Oh, there's a do not draft section. That's pretty cool. Um, if you've got anybody kind of like that you just have a red flag on that you don't necessarily want. Um, Malachi Tony, I think, is going to be great, especially if you're playing in a full PPR format. Malachi Tony, as a Florida State fan, it pains me to say, but Malachi Tony is probably going to be an elite college football fantasy player. Um, this interests me a little bit. Jaden Bach, Juwan Lacey, LJ Martin, these guys are very interesting to me just because obviously elite producers, but also some guys that don't necessarily catch a lot of passes. If you've played fantasy in the NFL space before, you know that's something that kind of differentiates a good running back from an elite running back in that tier. Um, so the running backs, that's going to be very fun to rank those guys. But I think for my number two, I'm going to come back here to the quarterback position, and I'm probably going to go with Trinidad Chambliss here. I think this is going to be a top guy for me. Um, going to be drafted very highly. Obviously, the combination of the scramble and the passing, um, very underrated player in a lot of spaces. He kind of took a little bit of heat whenever he went through all this stuff with the court injunction against the NCAA, and I think that that bad PR, bad media view has kind of affected a lot of people's memory of how he plays, and he plays phenomenally, and he has everything that you could ask for in a fantasy quarterback. Um, so I think that he doesn't have the edge over Arch as a passer, obviously, but he probably has the edge over Arch in the scrambling department. I think I'm going to put Arch here as my number three. And these rankings have a lot of time to change, obviously, because of um, See, why does the top 25 not pull up the actual top 25? Very interesting. Hopefully, my computer's not just bugged and not working. But yeah, like I said, I think Malachi Tony becomes an elite fantasy guy for this kind of thing. Probably going to be drafting him very highly, especially if our commissioner changes our league to a full point PPR. Um, I think here is where my running backs will come in. I know a lot of people prefer Ahmad Hardy over Kawan Lacey, but I do prefer Kawan over Ahmad. Um, I believe that he has the ability and he is able to catch passes. Ole Miss obviously didn't use him for that this last year, but he does have the capability to do that, and I think that that could be something that will end up putting him over the top of Ahmad Hardy specifically. Ahmad Hardy doesn't offer you really anything in the passing game. A guy that does offer you a little bit in the passing game that could possibly come up here soon. LJ Martin does offer you a little bit in the passing department, but not much. I believe he finished last season with around 250-ish passing yards, which is more than Kawan and Ahmad Hardy. So that'll be interesting to see where a lot of people rank him. Obviously, Jaden Baugh, um, another guy that I'm not entirely sure how much he's going to offer you in the passing game. Probably not a ton. Um, Isaac Brown, he's going to offer you a lot in the running game. I see with how many players there are in college football, I feel like this is just so much deeper, so much harder to rank a lot of these things. Bo Jackson, I think, is going to have an insane year at OSU. He was a freshman last year, and I thought that he was a sophomore. I thought this upcoming year would be the year he was going to enter into the NFL. Um, so yeah, very, very interesting. So we're at number 6. Let me look at what quarterbacks I have left, but I think I already know who my decision is going to be here. Hmm. Yeah, I think I'm going to come back here to LJ Martin. Like LJ Martin here and what he offers you in the passing game, I think that that's going to be overlooked by a lot of people. Um, these quarterbacks, that the quarterbacks are rated very highly. They just I don't know why they don't show up when you go to all positions. I wish that this was in order, but it's just not. Whatever. That's okay. Um, Antoine Raymond. I see. Insane year last year. Very talented running back. Plays against horrible competition. Um, I guess let's back up step there. He plays against a lesser competition than a lot of these other guys do, and that I believe will be an advantage for him. Um, but some of these quarterbacks are going to offer you a lot here. I think Sam Levitt's going to offer you a lot in the ground game. He might be who I have coming up next here. John Mateer's going to offer you a lot. Connor Weigman at Houston's going to offer you a lot, and at Houston, you're not playing against such premier talent. See, man, a guy like Sam Levitt, who's just super talented, offers you everything in the rushing game that you could want from a fantasy quarterback. But he's playing at LSU in one of the top two conferences, maybe the top conference in college football. So that's very interesting. Devin Dampier out of Utah isn't going to be playing against as hard a competition, but is he as talented as Sam Levitt? Um, I think I'm going to go with Devin Dampier here. I do until I have played through a season of this college football fantasy. I do think I am going to lean towards some of these guys. Obviously, I'm not going to pass on talent because they're in the Big Ten or the SEC, but I do think that I will be looking very heavily at some of these, um, like guys that play in the ACC, guys that play in some of these lesser conferences. Keelan Russell is probably going to be a good pick. He's rated as the number 17 overall pre-draft guy. I think that will come up. He just hasn't by week 3. this will be very different. Obviously, he'll already be drafted by that point. Um, but yeah, I think that Keelan Russell's going to be great next year. I don't know if I might be scared off of drafting him or putting him here in this top 10 just because of the fact that we haven't really seen him play a full season of football. Um, let's see. We're at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We got to get our number 8 guy in here. I almost want to put another quarterback in here. Drew Mestamaker led the NCAA in passing yards last year. This could be a good shout. But he doesn't offer you as much as a guy like Sam Levitt in the pass or in the rushing game or John Mateer. John Mateer's probably going to be a great pick this year. I Everything that happened with the thumb last year, I don't buy the John Mateer not being the group that claims that John Mateer's just not good at quarterback or not good at football. I think that you're crazy if you're in that camp. Um, we can have a deeper discussion on that later. He had obviously the thumb injury and all of that. I think that that heavily impacted him throughout the season last year. Obviously, this guy was a Heisman favorite for a couple of weeks. I think that John Mateer is coming in at number 8. Um, Darian Minsaw, this I think that he's going to be very underrated. Kevin Jennings plays in the SEC or the ACC. Um, Byron Brown obviously rushed for over 1,000 yards last year at the quarterback position. Could this be a guy? I mean, you're throwing for over 2,000 yards. He's probably going to be around that 2,500 to 2,800 mark if he continues to get better from last year. If he still rushes for 1,000 yards, this could be a great guy. Obviously, coming up to a premier conference could hurt him. He's going to be playing against tougher competition, so we'll see if he's still able to be, if he's able to just out athlete everyone. But he did out athlete Florida last year, so we have seen him do it against that SEC competition. Very interesting pick here. Um, these ratings or picks will be very interesting to come back to at the end of the season. Marcel Reed is probably going to be great. Another guy that plays in the SEC, playing against that hard competition, but offers you everything that you could want in the ground game. I think we're going back to running back here. I think this is gonna be where I bring in Ahmad Hardy. Him being rated at 272 is kind of crazy. I'm not aware of something that would have dropped him to 272. That's very interesting. Um, yeah, that's very strange. I believe that you could say he's a top 2, top 3 running back in college football. So that's maybe these rankings are just like them being thrown in here. Um, I do think that running backs are going to run college football fantasy. Obviously, I have um, 2 wide receivers before my first running back on this list, but I think that that's kind of a special case. Obviously, Jeremiah Smith, the best wide receiver prospect since Calvin Johnson. Malachi Tony, obviously as a freshman, just lit up college football. Probably going to be a PPR champion. He's going to catch a lot of these short passes and he's going to take them to the house. Saw him do it against Florida State, so that one hurts a little bit. And then I think I am going to bring Antoine Raymond here as my last pick before we kind of just finish this little exploration. Um, I love the fact that he led the NCAA in rushing yards, and then he's playing for the same team that he played for last year. He has that familiarity playing against this lesser competition. Really like that. Um, when you take a guy that's that talented and you play against, you know, some of the teams that they play against, he's gonna score fantasy points. Um, so this is just kind of thrown together. Obviously, learning a little bit about what this is gonna look like. Um, Super interesting. This is gonna be very fun to get into. Love a guy like Nick Marsh. My eyes are wandering as I speak to you. Um, to some of these names down here on this list. Jaden Bach could be a big surprise. This is going to be very fun. Um, let's see, we checked over the research tab. The stat tracker doesn't do anything as of right now, but I can show y'all what that looks like. Um, Star your favorite matchups and games to follow them here. This is going to be super cool. I do think something that we're going to see a lot of in college football fantasy is matchup targets. And I think that that's going to be a lot more prominent than it is in the NFL because you're talking about the difference in 32 teams in the NFL and 100 plus ish teams in college football. Um, I think the waiver wire is going to be very active on a week to week basis. Um, People picking up, like the top running back from a school that's playing against a Division two school or things like that, or an FCS school. So this tab I think is going to be very helpful for the people that will use it correctly. Um, I'm not sure what this is going to track. I'm assuming it's going to track my players once I have a team from this league. It'll let me filter through my leagues. If I have another one, shows me who my players are going to be playing. I'm going to assume right here. Obviously, you have your other sports up here. This is probably NFL. Um, is this college basketball? That would be very cool. It is college basketball. Okay. That'll be very fun to get into as well. I just started getting into the NBA this last year, and as a result of that, obviously college basketball as well. So very interesting, very cool there. I think that the people that use this effectively are probably going to really like that and have an advantage over their league mates. Once the season starts, it got rid of my preferred players. That's awesome. I was going to use that for later, but that's okay. I do just wonder, okay, I'm not going to do that right now then, why it's so out of order. Um, uh, yeah, so strange. Checked out the player list. Can't cut list. This is going to be interesting. There'll be people on your team. The can't cut list is designed for teams with 10 or more teams to prevent teams from dumping elite players. It is not recommended for leagues with less than 10 teams. This is cool. So basically, huh, it'll be cool to get into to see who they consider can't cut players. I don't know if this is a complete list or just what they have currently. Obviously, there's nothing for our league, nothing in our team. I wanted to see the draft room. Um, it's not going to show me that right now, is it? Oh, you can't even do mock drafts yet. So yeah, we'll have to get into that another day. But yeah, like I said, this is going to be I think super fun. I think this is going to be good for the sport, good for the fan base. We're gonna have a lot of fun with this college football fantasy. I think that there's a lot to discover, a lot to dive into, lots of content, things that we'll be able to talk about and learn about as we go. Um, but yeah, I like I mentioned at the beginning of this podcast, um, this is something that I've been wanting to do for a long time, something that I really enjoy. Um, I love football, specifically college football. We are going to talk a little bit about um, the NFL in here as well. Obviously, they're intertwined. I'm a big draft guy. I love breaking down prospects and watching film. We'll probably do some film breakdown on some guys coming into the season. Maybe some of these um, guys that are poised for breakouts, um, things like that. Looks like there's already even Yahoo's already got their writers on top of everything, writing a bunch of stuff about players and things like that. So this is probably something that'll be fun for people to check out if you are going to be getting into this. This is super fun. Um, Very, very excited. Um, I think, and I want to do. I think what I'm gonna do is I'm probably going to. Well, this episode will obviously release. This is gonna be the first episode of many. I'll try and stay on it at minimum a weekly basis. Um, I don't want to overload with content. Obviously, I also have a life, a full-time job and things like that that I do. This is just something that I am wanting to do for fun on the side. Um, but yeah, this is the Couch Coach podcast. This is going to be very fun. Already super excited just jumping in and talking to this. Like I said, today is kind of like an exploration. We're just kind of getting into it, unprepped kind of thing, but in the future, things are going to be a little bit more prepped. Obviously, we'll do some mock drafts once the mock drafts are opened up and things like that. But I appreciate anyone who's listening. Um, if you want to leave a comment, this will be on Spotify, YouTube, things like that. You can leave your comments if there's any things you want to hear about specifically, any players you want breakdowns of before the season starts, whether it be NFL or college. I would love to kind of dive into some of these players, talk about what I know about football, um, share my perspective on a lot of these guys and my outlook for them going into this next season. Maybe we even start up like a listeners college fantasy league. I think that'd be super fun. Um, so yeah, I appreciate you all, and I will see you guys later.